AJ, you know that it's a slow news week because I'm actually going to give you a little history story,
All right.
which I don't usually do. So these are 8 quaint and curious facts about the strange life of Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, very depressed, man.
Number 1, he wasn't born as Edgar Allan Poe. His middle name might be a big part of Poe's perceived identity, but he wasn't always called that. When the future literary master was born, his parents named him simply Edgar Poe. Sadly, his father abandoned the family when Poe was only a year old. A year later, his mother died of tuberculosis, the first in the long list of personal losses Poe experienced over his life. The orphan Poe was taken in by John Allan, a successful businessman from Richmond, Virginia. Although the Allens never officially adopted him, they christened the child Edgar Allan Poe. Poe himself wasn't a huge fan of the middle name and often signed his documents as Edgar A. Poe. His friends, meanwhile, simply called him Eddie. Number 2, Poe
Hmm.
married his 13-year-old cousin.
Oh, how old was he?
Uh, 27.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh, cancel Edgar Allan Poe. Cancel him. Jeez. Oh, that's so bad. 13? Oh God. Oh God.
So
Those are
yeah,
freaking children, man. Oh, how long ago did he live?
um, okay, so it says fine. Let's address what's perhaps the most widely known strange fact about Poe's life, which I did not know this. It's true. He married his underage cousin Virginia Clem at the time of their marriage in 1836. So like he lived
Okay.
early
That was that
1800s.
time period, I guess. But oof.
Clem was only 13. That made her 14 years Poe's junior, as he was 27 at the time. But that's just what people did at the time, right? Not really. Even people in 1836 were uncomfortable about the whole thing.
Jeez, when 1836 is like, yo, this guy's wild, like that's something.
It says, on the bright side, historians now believe the marriage was more of a friendly arrangement and had no or very little romantic or physical aspects.
I'm hoping no
You would
romantic
hope
aspect.
so. But then,
Yeah.
like, maybe it
Why'd
was
they
a
do it?
maybe it was a deal where, like, is one of those things where he would look down upon if he wasn't married. Maybe he was like secretly gay, and she was like his 13-year-old.
Oh.
You never know.
And she could have had like all her, relationships like, secret, or whatever.
Could
Like,
be, yeah.
yeah.
But
But
honestly, like I would have thought in 1836 people would have been like, "Yeah, that's normal," but apparently not. Apparently, even back
yeah,
then
I would have thought, yeah.
they were like, "That's a bit extreme."
Geez, that kind of, I mean, then it pushes back the whole narrative on that, like probably a little bit earlier than I thought. Like, I thought in the 1800s people were kind of wild like that, but
I did too, yeah.
uh,
And still, they wouldn't have had a problem that it was his cousin. Like back then,
yeah,
that
that
was
would be
just like
fine.
everyone
Yeah,
marries their cousin.
yeah.
Number 3, Poe designed The Raven to be a hit. We often think of Poe as a brooding figure pouring his misery onto the paper. In reality, however, his writing process was highly calculated from beginning to end. Take, for example, his famous poem, The Raven. Poe firmly believed that to be well received, a poem should be short, have a catchy rhyme scheme, and be mostly understandable to the everyman. That's just the logic he followed when he crafted The Raven. Although publishers were initially reluctant to publish it, Poe's formula worked. The Raven was a massive hit and turned Poe into a literary celebrity overnight. Considering that even Baltimore Ravens are named after the poem, Poe really knew a thing or two about writing. What a world, though, where writing a poem can make you a celebrity.
Yeah, that is wild. Yeah, that I guess. I mean, there was nothing else back then. They didn't have anything. They had
That's
like
true.
all they did was read. They had like maybe plays and stuff, right? So
Right, yeah. Number 4, Poe was a seasoned athlete. Another fact that goes against Poe's Gothic image is his athleticism. Instead of a pasty, frail scribe locked in his dungeon, Poe was quite the sportsman. In particular, Poe loved swimming. At one point, he even broke the Virginia record for the sport by swimming more than 6 miles up James River against the current. Swimming wasn't the only sport Poe excelled at, though. He also did rowing, boxing, and long jumping whenever he wasn't hiking through Virginia's forests. That is true. They
Okay.
like in like paintings of him and stuff.
He's
I
frail
Yeah, he does appear more frail.
and like emo kind of like yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, like the original emo.
Yeah.
Number five, Poe invented modern detective fiction. Today, the name Edgar Allan Poe is almost synonymous with horror, but even Poe couldn't bring himself to write only about spooky castles and tragic human fates. He dabbled in many genres throughout his life, from love poems to romantic fiction, but perhaps most importantly, he single handedly invented detective fiction. Poe's short story, The Murders in the Rue Morgue, laid the template for modern detective stories. Its main character, C. Auguste Dupin, is a brilliant detective who solves crimes through cold logic and analytical reasoning. So if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes, Miss Marple, Hercule Poirot, or any other famous detectives, you can thank Poe for coming up with your favorite genre.
Did you say Miss Marvel?
Uh, Miss Marple.
Oh, okay. I was like, yeah, I don't remember her being detective like.
I've never. I know there is like a Miss Marple like television show. There's probably several of them, but I've never watched any of those. So I'm kind of unfamiliar with that character.
I never even heard of her,
Number six, Poe loved cats. You might not think Poe was a particular fan of cats from reading his stories. More than a couple of them feature ominous felines, not least his short story, The Black Cat. If you haven't read that one, it tells of an animal loving man who slowly begins abusing his pets and in increasingly horrific ways. Poe himself, however, would never have hurt a cat. He loved them and he kept his own purring furball. Fun fact, Poe named his cat Katerina. Punny pet names are by no means a modern thing. Number seven, the cause of Poe's death remains a mystery. Poe died on October 7th, 1849, in Baltimore, Maryland. To this day, nobody knows how. He had been feeling under the weather a few days before his death, but he didn't exactly seem like he was about to kick the bucket. Yet on October 3rd, he was found in a disoriented state while dressed in someone else's clothes. He died 4 days later. Over the years, people have put forward many theories about what caused his death, ranging from alcohol poisoning to a brain tumor, syphilis, and even murder. One of the more interesting theories posits Poe was a victim of cooping, a form of electoral fraud where the victim is drugged and forced to vote in multiple locations under false
What?
identities. That explained his delirious state and bizarre clothes. I mean, that sounds that sounds unlikely, but it's funny that it was common enough that they had a name for it. Cooping.
That's crazy. They would poison a guy and then vote in multiple counties under that guy's name.
It says the victim would be drugged and forced to vote in multiple locations.
That is so weird. How do you like? What do you have, like a Weekend at Bernie situation? Like,
I guess so. Two guys like carry this guy in that can barely stand, and he's like, "Oh, we're just helping him vote."
yeah, just doing some old voting over here.
Nothing to see here.
Oh my god, the schemes people came up with when they had like no laws are insane, man. Like that just shows if people could get away with something, if they were like given the freedom to creatively think of nefarious things, they will come up with the craziest, like insane plots. Like, oh my gosh. I
I
don't
know
know.
you think of the stuff our politicians pull today. Can you imagine what politicians were getting up to in those days when there was no rules? Just
And like
it's
nobody could really check you like what you were
right.
doing. Like, oh my god, yeah. Especially like monarchies. Oh my goodness, man. I would think kings and queens were just like you find out later they were crazy. Like people
Right.
back then didn't know. They were just like, "Oh, the king said we need to do this on Thursdays." Also, you know what? I think a lot of religious stuff like numbers, colors, certain things are bad luck. Don't do this on a certain day. I think those were caused by like some sort of mental illness. Like
Probably.
some weird, like, yeah, that is some weird ass shit. Like, that has no bearing on reality whatsoever. Yeah, that's definitely mental illness involved there.
It was probably caused by like some king back in the day that had like some weird OCD,
OCD, yeah.
and he was like very superstitious about a certain thing, and
Yeah.
yeah, made some sort of weird law about it at the time. Probably, I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
And then finally, number 8, Poe was a victim of a post or of a posthumous smear campaign. Many people today know Poe as a barely functional alcoholic, and while the man wasn't averse to a stiff drink, he was nowhere near the wreck and lunatic he's made out to be. Poe's bad reputation is all because of Rufus Griswold, his longtime literary rival. Though some finagling, his sworn enemy managed to become Poe's literary executor, um, and so Griswold set to work to tarnish Poe's name. Griswold wrote a long, slandering obituary filled with blatant lies after Poe died. Although it was soon revealed the obituary was Griswold's writing, the damage had already been done. Many people still think Poe was a raving, drug-fueled madman. Well, I mean, the way he died makes you wonder if he wasn't
They
a
kept
little
wicked
bit.
at burning the guy. Like, no wonder he had that reputation.
Yeah, this slanderous obituary. I even heard he voted illegally multiple times.
He just hung out with 2 other guys and kept voting, man. The trio.
I want to. I want to know when they finally put it into law that like cooping wasn't allowed. Like if we catch you weekending at Bernie's, some guy
Probably when some
voting.
like probably when some prominent politician lost an election. Like up until then, they were like, "Cooping's fine. Who cares?"
Right. uh, so yeah, kind of interesting about him, but yeah, definitely a slow news week. I don't usually bust out the
No, that was
historical
interesting. Yeah, that
facts
was really
articles, but